For nearly 40 years, the ranch had known only one heartbeat, and it belonged to Elias Crow, a man so weathered by time and silence that the land itself seemed to breathe with him. He woke before dawn every morning, the same way he had since the late 1970s, stepping out of his creaking wooden house with a tin mug of coffee in hand, scanning the wide Wyoming plains where grass bent like old men in the wind, and the sky stretched endlessly, indifferent and vast, and in all those decades through droughts, brutal winters, and the slow dying of nearby towns, Elias had not spoken to a woman for more than a few passing words at a supply store. Not since the night his young wife was buried, beneath a cedar tree at the edge of the property, her laughter swallowed by illness and time, leaving behind a man who learned to survive on routine instead of hope. The locals said he was a ghost, that he preferred it that way, and maybe he did, because solitude hurt less than remembering, until one morning shattered the rhythm of his life in a way no storm or tragedy ever had, when he stepped onto his porch and froze, his breath catching painfully in his chest as 6 figures stood at the far edge of his ranch gate, unmoving, their silhouettes dark against the rising sun. 6 women, young, strong, impossibly out of place, dressed in travel-worn clothes, dust clinging to their boots and hems, hair braided or tied back as if they'd ridden for days. And before Elias could even think to call out or reach for the old rifle leaning by the door, they did something so unexpected it robbed him of thought entirely. One by one, they lowered themselves to their knees in the dirt, heads bowed, hands resting on their thighs, as if the land itself demanded their reverence. And the sight struck Elias with such force that his mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the porch boards, the sound echoing like a gunshot across the fields. His first instinct was anger, then suspicion, because no one came to this place by accident, and certainly no group of women knelt uninvited on another man's land. Yet beneath the confusion churned something far more dangerous: curiosity, and, as he slowly approached the fence, every step felt like crossing decades he'd buried deep inside himself, memories of warmth and conversation clawing back to life with each heartbeat, until he stood just yards away, close enough to see their faces clearly. And that was when he noticed the scars, faint lines on wrists, a healed burn along one collarbone, the hardened eyes of women who had survived things the world preferred not to see. And when the tallest among them finally lifted her head, meeting Elias's gaze with an intensity that made his hands tremble, she spoke his name as if she'd known him all her life. Elias Crow. And the way she said it, steady, respectful, almost reverent, sent a chill down his spine, because no one had spoken his full name aloud in decades, and he demanded to know who they were and what they wanted, his voice rough from years of disuse. But instead of answering directly, the woman explained that they had come because of a promise, one written long ago in a place Elias had sworn never to think about again, a promise made by a younger version of himself when he still believed the world could be fair. And as she spoke, fragments of memory surfaced like bones in shallow water. A train station, a storm, a moment of mercy offered to strangers when he himself had nothing. And suddenly Elias understood, with a terrifying clarity, that these women were not intruders, they were consequences of a kindness he barely remembered giving, a kindness that had traveled across years and borders to return to him now when he least expected it. The woman told him they had nowhere else to go, that they had been searching for him for years, guided only by a name and a story past between them like a sacred fire, and they knelt not to beg but to honor him, because to them he was not a recluse or a forgotten rancher. He was the man who once saved their lives without asking for anything in return. And as the sun climbed higher, and the wind carried the smell of earth and grass between them, Elias felt something inside his chest crack open, something he thought had turned to stone long ago, and in that moment, standing before 6 kneeling strangers who claimed him as their last hope, he realized his decades of solitude had not been an ending after all, but a long, quiet pause before a story far bigger than his own finally resumed. And if this moment has already pulled you into Elias's world, if you want to know who these women are, what promise binds them to him, and how a man forgotten by time becomes the center of 6 fates intertwined, then now is the moment to subscribe, because this story is only just beginning, and what happens next will change everything.